What would you do if you were chased by a UFO? Why would two small-town civil rights activists destroy their reputation? Would you be brave enough to face an alien? Today we test the believability of the Barney and Betty Hill abduction.
Welcome to Believing the Bizarre,
where we dive into the unknown and the unusual,
and tell you whether or not we find it believable.
Listen, I'm sorry. I was caught off guard. I was staring at Tyler's hair.
Oh, is it crazy right now?
It is like spiking up in the middle.
When did I take my hat off?
I don't know.
I remember putting these headphones on with this hat, and now I'm looking at this hat.
I don't know, but I'm pretty.
Here, I'm gonna put my hat on.
Okay. Thank goodness, because it was too much.
Was it too distracting?
It was a little distracting. It was almost as distracting as seeing a spaceship.
Almost as distracting.
Now, you know this case.
I do. This is one of the big dogs.
Yeah, this is a heavy hitter.
There's probably in a handful of famous UFO cases, this is one of them. Like if you count 5 famous UFO cases.
Absolutely.
Easily.
This is such a big one.
Like Roswell,
Travis
Walton. Those are probably the top 3.
Phoenix Lights, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's not an abduction.
Yeah, they're just big old lights. Silent.
You saw them there.
Silent lights.
But this is a big one. I thought we deserved this.
We deserve this.
Yeah.
Before we melt in this attic, we are going to knock out Betty and Barney Hill.
All right. So, are you ready to dive in?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so this is basically just a long story. There's no encounters. There's no theories. This is just one long encounter.
We decided to give Reddit a day off. Reddit, this is your vacation. We'll be back next week.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Rancor.
No rancor in this. Although I do have a bunch of sources. This website called Unresolved. I've never heard of them before. Quartz, History Channel, Outdoors.org, and Starfacts.com.
I like the name Starfacts. Outdoors.org makes it seem like they teach me how to fish.
It does seem really outdoorsy, but that's okay.
Wikipedia.
There's a little bit of Wikipedia.
There's nothing wrong with Wikipedia.
I was taught that you can't use Wikipedia.
I know, it was like literally drilled in our heads not to use Wikipedia, but Wikipedia has some of the best articles. It really does.
That's true. And I do kind of avoid using it sometimes.
I think they've tightened things up since we were in high school.
That could be. That's many years ago now. So that absolutely could be. So with that, let's just launch into this because it's not gonna lie, Tyler, it's a long ass story. This was the first widely reported interaction with UFO and aliens. And until this point, there are lots of people saying they saw things in the sky, but nothing like this. Nothing on this scale.
Of course, because it's the 60s. UFOs were bumping in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
That's right, because you got Roswell, you got
Travis Walton was in, wasn't it?
Bro, I think that was the 70s, actually.
I said 50s, 60s, 70s.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Roswell, this was the thing. Also, aliens were huge on TV, which we're going to get into much later.
Pascagoula?
When was that? I don't remember.
70s, I believe.
That makes sense.
Because they had cars without clocks.
That's right.
Just radios.
So this case is all the tropes of an alien encounter, possibly because it is one of the first cases.
It does not have the beam, though, right?
There's no beam. And we'll talk about that, why there's no beam.
Okay.
There's missing time, and there's strange lights in the sky, and there's fear. Little gray men who do terrible things to honest Americans. So, according to the book, and you feel free to interrupt me, Tyler. Don't let anyone on Instagram tell you otherwise.
Okay.
So, according to the book...
So anyway, no, it's just fine.
According to the book, an uninterrupted story, Betty and Barney decided they needed a break. And we're going to get into their backstories in a minute.
You don't mean like a relationship break?
No. I mean like a break from life.
Okay. A break from Earth.
Yeah, well, no. They have a pretty stressful life. They were a couple that came together in the heart of the civil rights movement. And it's important to state that this was a random trip. They've been married for about 16 months. And they had a quote-unquote urge to go on this random vacation, and it was spontaneous. Though on the trip, the couple called it a, quote, delayed honeymoon, as they saw Niagara Falls and Montreal. And this trip was so random, they had $70 on them when they left. They just took off.
That was probably... I wonder what the equivalent of $70 back then is now. Maybe like a couple hundred?
I want to say a couple $100, maybe $200. Still, it's not that much.
Have you been to the Canadian side of Niagara Falls?
I've not.
I've only been to the Canadian side.
I've been to the New York side.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was there, I was younger, and they had a WWE store, and I was probably at that WWE store more often than I was at the Falls.
Oh, you're like, wow, let's go, brother.
I got like a Matt Hardy shirt, a Kane shirt, and Shawn Michaels tank top. I was very much into wrestling when I was younger.
The only wrestlers I can remember off the top of my head are, I was going to say the Grim Reaper guy, I can't remember his name.
Undertaker?
Undertaker.
The Grim Reaper guy.
Gold Dust.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And, brother, what's his name?
Hollywood.
Hogan.
Hogan. You know John Cena, though.
Now I do. Yeah, I guess so.
Now you do. Dude, I was on the plane to Savannah. I swear to God, I thought Stone Cold Steve Austin was sitting in front of me.
Oh, he's a wrestler, too.
But then I heard him speak. I was like, nah, that's not him.
He's like really high.
Every bald guy with a goatee might be Stone Cold.
You can never have a beer around him. He just takes it and chugs it.
I would never talk to him, because if he found out I didn't like beer, he would Stone Cold stunner me.
I like a good cider. He's just like, no.
I like a good cider. Famous last words.
So let's move on to the brief history of the individuals themselves. Barney's got a wild history. It's kind of crazy. So Barney was born in Virginia in 1922. So in the roaring 20s and into the Great Depressions into the 30s. It was a hard time for anyone to experience their youth.
I think we can all relate a little bit right now.
A little bit. But Barney was also faced with racism. When he was a young man, Barney enlisted in the army, and that was during World War II. And I said allegedly in my notes, but I've come across it in a couple places after I wrote this down. He lost all of his teeth in a grenade accident.
What?
He lost all of his teeth. And that's going to come back later.
Did the shrapnel just perfectly knock his teeth?
It was a shockwave.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and he wore dentures. So after his time in the army, Barney married a woman named Ruth Horn, and he married her while he was studying at Temple University. Now, Ruth and Barney had 2 children, and he and Ruth eventually did get divorced, and he remarried a white woman, Betty, and they moved to New Hampshire eventually, and he becomes a postal worker that drove pretty hard, 60 miles every night.
60?
60 miles a night.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it's a long drive.
It is quite a bit, yeah.
Now, Betty's full name is Eunice Elizabeth, and her maiden name is Barnett.
So where does Betty come from?
I think it comes from Beth, from Elizabeth.
Oh, okay.
If I had to guess. Now, Betty's a few years older than Barney. She was born in 1919, and Betty was a social worker with her master's in social sciences from the University of New Hampshire, who I hit up for this case.
What?
I hit them up because they have this whole archive.
Yeah. They're like, who's this? What podcast?
They're like, there's a small fee if you want to check out some folders. And I was like, how much is the fee? And they never got back to me. So
they're like, if you ask how much, it's too much.
Yeah. Anyway, so she was even the supervisor for her local child welfare department.
I feel like getting a master's back then is kind of like insane.
Pretty accomplished, especially for a woman in the 60s, which is crazy.
Anyone with a master's is like really intelligent.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh. So together they lived in New Hampshire in a city called Portsmouth. They were passionate about the civil rights movement happening in America at the time, being they were an interracial couple. They were heavily involved in their local church, and they were members of the NAACP. Barney was actually his local representative for the NAACP. And they were well-respected members of the community. Thankfully for them, they did live in a more liberal area of the country at the time, New Hampshire was. And I think that was helpful for them. They weren't as, their relationship was not as stigmatized.
Yeah, especially for that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like a brief history on the people. That's who they are before this happens.
Right. So you know the people as these terrible things happen to them. You got to care about the characters before the story. But
also it sets this precedent of they're not crackpots. They're not crazy people who are they're credible people.
Yeah.
So what actually happened? The couple did endure stress, like I said, and this may have been enough to give Barney an ulcer. which is its medical thing. I think it's like a hole in your stomach.
You can get a stress ulcer, yeah.
Yeah.
No, ulcers suck.
And
I don't know from experience. I just know people have had ulcers and they suck.
And in turn, this gave him enough time to take a short sabbatical or leave of absence from his job as a postal worker. And during this time of absence is when they decided to take this trip to Canada. And they also have the wiener dog with them. And his name is Delsley. So remember the whole time that there's a little wiener dog with them going bark, 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 named Delsley. And they brought him on this spontaneous outing. And the two were on their way back from a small deserted vacation from Canada on the evening of September 19th, 1961. And they were on their home stretch of the 500-mile drive when things got interesting. The two stopped at a diner in Vermont while returning home, and they left this diner around 10 p.m. They were on track to reach Portsmouth at about 2 a.m.
Ew.
Yeah. It's late night. It's late night. And they're older, too. They're in their late 30s, early 40s.
That's not that old. Let's calm down now.
Older.
Yeah. I wonder how much of their $70 they still have.
I would guess none.
They spent it all at the diner.
I would guess nothing. Nada. Between hotel rooms and sightseeing, nothing. I think they blew it. That's okay. But on this dark rural highway in New Hampshire, they started to notice a strange light in the sky that was on their tail, following them.
I wonder how in tune they were, or with the idea of UFOs. Like, obviously during that time, it was very prevalent. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody either bought in or was, like, hyper-aware. I'll let you continue this story.
No, it's okay.
My thought is, I wonder if immediately they were thinking UFOs, or if at first it was just weird, or government, or...
I think they thought it was weird. I don't think they immediately jumped to UFO.
It was Venus.
Okay, let's keep going. I don't want to spoil it. Barney thought that the object was nothing. He thought it could have been anything in the night. It looked like satellite, or a falling star, or even a plane, if he's hoping.
It's been falling for a long time now.
Betty was more wary of the thing in the sky. So while driving, it seemed to be somehow following the car, and the ship dodged in and out of the car's line of sight, like up into the moon's shadow, behind trees, but eventually it always landed behind them. Though Betty was a little more nervous and had a thought of what might have been following them than Barney, he was still calm enough, having seen many aircrafts in the war, and he was able to calm down Betty. So with his calmness and Betty's curiosity, they felt comfortable enough to pull off at a rest stop to let the dog, Delsley, walk around. And at this rest stop, Betty took out her binoculars to get a closer look at the bright light that was on their tail.
Did she bring the binoculars to see Niagara Falls?
Actually, that's a good point.
She didn't know how big the falls was. She heard it was pretty big, but she wasn't sure. So imagine somebody standing in front of the falls with their binoculars.
I could see it though. Like if you want to see like all the way in the bottom or something.
If you want, yeah, that's true. If you want to see the Maiden, the
Maid of the Mist, right?
Yeah, Maid of the Mist. Maybe if you want to see that
or something. I don't know. I don't know why they have binoculars.
She puts them on. Yep, there it is.
I don't know. I think that's an older thing to do, like from the 60s, 70s. I think that's more common back then.
You never know what birds you might run into.
You never know what you're going to need to be able... You might join a pirate crew, and then you need binoculars.
Yeah, land ho. Waterfall ho.
That's so dumb. Land ho.
Imagine Betty up in the crow's nest with binoculars.
Oh, Barney! I can't see anything.
You got them backwards, honey.
Oh, thank you, Barney. So they saw this thing and they grabbed their dog and they jumped in the car. They grabbed the dog and they jumped back in the car, hoping to finish the rest of the trip quickly. As the car started going down Route 3, the two agreed that this was not a normal night object. But after the last stop, this became an all-in-out chase. While it got closer, the Hills also recounted the feeling of an odd, tingling drowsiness start to come over them. Quickly, the light was chasing the Hills and got close. So close, it was approximately 100 feet over the car. The Hills were resigned as they looked at what they saw and recognized as a UFO. Barney stomped on the brakes as the disc hovered over them, and that's when he reached over Betty and produced a handgun that was hidden beneath the seats, and he jammed it into his pockets. Barney slowly left the car, but rushed into a dark field where the UFO lowered. He could hear loud sequencing beeping when this object hovered in the night sky. Barney recounted, quote, "It was as big as a jet," end quote. And it was also flat. Barney was struck with awe and terror as he stared at this giant ship. As he looked at the saucer with his binoculars, he saw that there were rows of windows with lights on, and in the lights he saw humanoid-shaped things with gray uniforms. As he stared at something he was very unsure of, he went to grab his gun and level it at the craft, but he found that his hand would not let him. He also heard a voice in his head that told him to put down the binoculars. Whether instinct from military training or pure adrenaline, Barney realized the situation. He realized they were in danger. He sprinted to the car, and they sped down the running street as a UFO glided behind them with ease while Betty watched. Barney heard more beeping from their trunk, and that's when they both blacked out. So, smash cut to 2 hours later, and the Hills wake up in their car 35 miles south from Indian Head, New Hampshire. Now, at this point, they're very close to home, not quite at home yet. I had another report that said they were at home, they woke up at home, but I had a couple said that they weren't quite home.
So they fast traveled home.
They lost 2 hours. So they kind of like slowly go home, and they arrive at their place at about 5 a.m.
So really, it actually delayed them.
Yes.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it delayed them. So they said 2 to 3, so about 2 hours.
It's not like the aliens knew where they were going, though. They probably just did their best guess, and they're like, this is probably fine.
Thankfully, they landed closer to where they're supposed to be.
That's true. Imagine they woke up in, like, Idaho.
Oh my god. Jesus Christ.
They don't even care about the abduction. They're like, damn it. And we spent the last $5 at the diner.
They'd be doomed. Oh my god. Okay.
They leave that alien Uber a 1 star.
1 star, too handsy. So, they had no idea about what happened the night before. They woke up in the car, no idea what happened. They get home and they examine themselves, and Betty found that her dress was torn, and you can see the picture of it. It's torn down the middle, and Betty lost her blue earrings. Barney's binocular strap was ripped. His shoes were scuffed, I think this is really important, on top of the toes. Not the sides, not the bottom, on top. And his lower half of his whole body was sore.
Oh no. Oh no.
Both of their watches were stopped as well. So their watches were broken.
At the same time?
They didn't say what time they were stopped at.
I gotcha. I wonder if they stopped at the same time. I would assume so, but I also shouldn't assume.
So both did assume that something terrible happened, but still no idea what. And they took a shower, and over the next few nights, they started having horrific nightmares. And Barney was quoting as saying to a friend, his feeling was, quote, one of a person who saw something who doesn't want to remember, end quote.
Wait, he said that about himself?
Yeah. After the two showered and cleaned up, after feeling like they were, quote, dirty, they talked about what happened to them, and they drew up some pictures about what they sort of remembered. And they also noticed on their car was a strange mark on the top of the trunk that had not been there before.
They got tagged.
And the next day, they called Betty's sister Janet. And Janet put them in contact with the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomenon, which is NICAP.
Oh, she just happened to have their digits.
I wore the phone book. And they also contacted the Air Force. And Betty was actually really worried about radiation. Betty and Barney were worried about radiation poisoning. So they left all their stuff from the night of the incident. They left it out on the front porch for a couple days to, like, air it out, I guess. Which I don't know if that's how radiation poisoning works.
Well, it's a long time ago. It's interesting because this reminds me of Pascagoula, where, like, they showered and remember, what's his name, poured, like, bleach all over him.
Yeah.
Not Charlie, the other guy.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Yeah. It's probably just such a terrible feeling of, like, violation and just not knowing.
Absolutely.
Now, I wonder if they actually remembered, or I wonder if they're treating their dreams as memory.
I think kind of both. Like bits and pieces, like they kind of, like they heavily drink and, like, it's like blackouts, like you remember parts of it.
Yeah. I just wonder when they got back, it seemed like they didn't remember what happened, and then they went to sleep, had dreams, and I think it would make sense in the context of this story that the dreams are the repressed memories coming out, but I wonder if they're treating it like that.
I think we're going to see something in a little while that's going to...
You think?
I know. In a little bit, we're going to see a sequence of events that absolutely supports what you're saying.
Okay.
And it is also important to note that Betty said her torn dress There's also some kind of pink powder on it. I have no idea what that could be. Maybe some kind of decontamination? I don't know. Soap? So, Major Paul W. Henderson from the Air Force took the official statement from the Hills. During their conversation, Henderson told the Hills that at 2:14 approximately a.m., radar was picked up at Peace Air Base, and this has not been confirmed by military, but it's said that the Hills were told this by him. But this was. After a few days of working on the report, Henderson came to the conclusion, or was told to come to the conclusion, that the couple had misidentified the planet Jupiter.
Oh, no. No. Wow, we've seen Venus, we've seen Jupiter.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this was Jupiter, apparently.
Like, it would almost be believable if they were like falling star, right? Like meteor, comet, but they're like, planet. Come on. That's really, they're going to say Jupiter?
Jupiter. Isn't that crazy?
Now, okay, let's say there's two discussions. One, what they saw, and then two, which planet they saw. How long do you think it took them to decide to pick a planet? And then do you think there's like a voting system? It's like, all right, all those in favor of Mars, all those in favor of Saturn. One person wrote in Neptune.
I do think they put in Jupiter because it was supposed to be out that night as well.
Okay. Well, that makes, at least they were putting a little thought into it.
There is some thought that, not a lot, but there is some thought there.
It's like Pluto, because that'll always be a planet.
I think he was told to write that in. I mean, not to put on my conspiracy theory hat, but I think he believed them, and I think he was told to put this in.
It's funny because somebody claiming that it was Jupiter makes them more crazy than an alien in my head.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Like, I don't want to be crazy and say it's an alien, so just say it's Jupiter.
Yeah, it's just like, first episode, Neff.
Yeah.
Or not Neff. Why am I blaming Neff? It's not Neff's fault. But they said it was Venus, right?
Venus, yeah.
Crazy. Next section is, I labeled it therapy. After dealing with the trauma of something they can only partially remember for years, Betty was suffering from terrible dreams, and Barney suffered from anxiety. Betty had a stretch of 5 days shortly after the event happened, where she dreamed about her and Barney and about how they were stopped and how it began. And it went like this, basically. Over the stretch of 5 days, she had dreams that they were taken by two separate groups individually. They were taken to the craft in the nearby woods, and then her dreams depicted about things that happened to them on the ship. So those were Betty's dreams, and they lead into the next part, because, like I said, they talked to NICAP. And this guy, Michael Webb, the president of NICAP, and the pupil to J. Allen Hynek, decided to do this interview with the Hills about what they remembered from their abduction. Because they had slight memories, they remember some things, not all pieced together, but they talked to Webb about it. And they explained to Webb about what they claimed. They were chased, and they were taken, and they were pseudo-tortured. And Barney's friend, Major James McDonald, backed the credibility of the couple. That they're good people, they're church people, they part of the NAACP, they're strong ties in the community. They have no reason to do this. They have no reason
nothing
to
to gain, right?
Exactly. So Barney, who was sober for many years, after this event, after this interview, he started to drink. And he became withdrawn with his anxiety. And he also developed a very small ring of warts on top of his genital area. So like above, there's an oompa. And Barney's ulcer at this point had also gotten a lot worse. So after this interview, and Barney seemed collapsed mentally and physically, is when therapy and hypnotherapy started to get tossed around to the couple. They agreed, and they started seeing a psychiatrist named Benjamin Simon. So this is what happened with Benjamin Simon. Through months of weekly sessions, the two pieced together what actually happened to them. So they're going through hypnotherapy. And just like Betty's dream, they saw something land on the car. So Betty had a dream where something landed on the car. Like a small, little ship. Do you remember the marks on the car that weren't there before?
Yes.
There were talks of marks in the car that weren't there before, and this explains that.
So this is separate from the actual mothership or the main UFO?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Because he was off in the field.
Mm-hmm. And this thing that landed on the car put them in this, trance-like state, and the saucer landed. They saw the saucer land.
Oh, they
in
heard
a field.
they heard beeping sounds behind them.
Yes, that's true.
Were the marks on the hood of the car or the back of the car?
They're in the trunk of the car.
So that's where they heard the beeping, and then that was the last thing they did or heard before they blacked out.
Mm-hmm. Short, gray, flat-faced beings carried/dragged the Hills out of their car up a ramp into the ship. So there's no beams. They're literally being taken from their car.
I like the carry/drag.
Yeah. And that explains the shoe prints, the shoe scuffs. Remember I said it's on top of his shoe?
Yeah.
That only way you could do that is if your toe is being dragged across the grass or the concrete.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's like he's doing a moonwalk. Is he doing a moonwalk? No. So at this point in the ship, Barney and Betty were separated. They went to different large curved exam rooms, and they were stripped and put onto metal tables. They took hair, nail, and skin samples, and they touched them with needles that were connected to wires and scanned their whole bodies, heads, legs, arms, spines. Betty recounted a huge needle that she begged them not to stick inside of her. They said it wouldn't hurt as they inserted it into her belly button, saying it was just a pregnancy test.
They said it wouldn't hurt, much.
And she screamed out in pain, and she said the, quote, leader, according to Betty, came over and with a hand motion to her face, made the pain go away.
So I lie down on the table, on my back, and he brings over this, how can I describe it? They're like needles. There's a whole cluster of needles. And each needle has a wire running from it. So then they roll me over on my back. And the examiner has a long needle in his hand. And I see the needle. And it's bigger than any needle I've ever seen. And I asked him what he's going to do with it. And he said, just a simple test, it won't hurt me. And I asked him what. And he said he just wants to put it in my navel. It's just a simple test. And I don't know it will hurt. Don't do it. Don't do it. And he said, no, it won't hurt. And he sticks a needle into my navel.
And the leader's the one that oversaw this whole thing. Barney also described them as having black, gray uniforms, kind of like Nazis. He said they looked like Nazis, which makes sense. He was in the war. Barney had a really terrible experience of this whole thing. And he was stricken with the eyes. He said the eyes of the aliens really scared him. He said, quote, "Oh, those eyes, they're in my brain," end quote. And I think this has something to do with their psychic communication control. He also said, quote, "I was told to close my eyes because I saw two eyes coming close to mine, and I felt like the eyes had been pushed into my eyes."
God, I'm scared. Do you see his lips move? Yes.
No, his lips aren't moving.
Yes, go on. He's telling you.
And he's looking at me.
What did he tell you?
Stay there and keep looking. Just keep looking and stay there. And just keep looking. Just keep looking.
Could you hear him tell you?
Oh, I gotta pull these binoculars away from my eyes. Because if I don't, I'll just keep staying there.
Could you hear him tell you this?
Oh, no, he didn't say it.
You felt he said it.
I know.
You know he
Just
said it.
there, yeah. Just stay there, he's saying to me. It's
All right.
pounding in my head. Just
All
don't
right.
pull the binoculars away. God, give me strength.
All right.
Pull them down. Run! Pull these binoculars down and run. God! It says my God, give me strength. I gotta get away. Oh!
I don't like things messing with my eyes.
Yeah.
Like needles, lobotomy stuff, which I know is like the frontal lobe, but going through the eye, like that stuff is... Now, did he describe the eyes, though?
That's about as much as he described them.
I wonder if they were all black, like the traditional grays that you think about, or if they were like cat eyes or red eyes.
They didn't say that. They didn't say what exactly they looked like.
I wonder what they look like. Obviously terrifying.
The Greys were also strangely fascinated with Barney's teeth because they were dentures, i.e. grenade to the face. Betty did explain to them that his teeth were fake, but Barney said they also put a cup-like device over his genitals and a tube had been inserted into his anus, then quickly removed.
Who explained to them that he had dentures?
Oh, Betty did.
To the aliens?
Yeah. Because Betty gets real chatty with them in a second.
They're like, beep boop, what's up with this? And she's like, oh, I've been trying to tell him to get dental implants, but he doesn't want to spend the money. You know how it goes. And like, girl, I know.
Yeah, but I think that thing around the cup around his genitals, I think that's what caused the warts.
Yes, I would. Well,
right,
something
that makes sense, right?
Well, I don't know if it makes sense, but if that's the only thing that comes in contact with it, then
it is. Yeah.
At least there's dots to connect here. Probably didn't wash it properly from their last use.
Ew. So I think Barney's examination was more of an attack, at least mentally, than it was for Betty, because Barney was really controlled and manipulated through fear, whereas Betty's examination was obviously, it was painful, but she was more comforted through her experience, and eventually led to her actually talking to the leader after. So after her experimentation, she talks to this leader, she asks them where they're from. According to Betty, the leader said, quote, "If you don't know where you are, there wouldn't be any point in telling you where I am," end quote. But he did show her a map, and under hypnosis, Betty drew this star map that she saw from the leader. And her map showed Zeta Reticuli, star system, from the planet's point of view. Zeta Reticuli was not discovered yet.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. So I'm going to quote Star Facts here.
She drew the Lord of the Rings map.
So Sarvac says, quote, "In 1968, amateur astronomer Fish used a 1969 Galilee star catalog to construct a model of a nearby stars based off Betty Hill's map and found that the only star that matched the map was Zeta Reticuli. Her conclusion found their way to the editor of Astrology magazine, and in December 1974, the magazine published an article and started a debate about the map. And Carl Sagan, the esteemed physicist, he was quoted as saying, "It was an arbitrary alignment of points," which is a pretty good burn, but I don't know if I agree. But that is basically how the story of Betty and Barney Hill ends. It ends with them getting this map that Betty drew, and they kind of live with this reputation forever of being not necessarily credible, but the first encounter of UFLs.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the big dogs, big ones.
Absolutely.
Is there video recording, I wonder, during any of the interviewing?
There is not video, there's audio.
Oh.
There's a whole bunch of audio. I was going to show you some.
Oh, man. Do you want to hear my theory?
Yeah.
All right, so the key point of the theory is that much of it was based on dreams, and the majority of the attacking was done to Barney.
Yeah.
All right, so I think there was a leader. I think they were drugged. I think they passed out, they blacked out, and stuff happened to them. But I think it was all done by Ruth.
Oh, his ex-wife?
His ex-wife.
Ah, boy.
She was coming at him. Yeah, no, that's it.
So out of left field.
I think it's, I was tossing it around, and then once you said that he was more so attacked, and they wanted to find out if she was pregnant, I'm like, sounds like Ruth.
I don't know if Ruth got a whole gang of people to attack them.
Ruth and the Roofies. That's her band name. And also her plan of attack.
But would you like to go to the discussion?
I would.
At this point in the episode, we do want to stop and thank the people who have recently joined us on Patreon. Jade, Michael, Mars, shout out my dog, Bethany, JT, Amanda, Jenny, Danny Bell? Is that right?
I think it's Danabelle.
Danabelle, and Sabrina. So thank you all for joining us, coming over, and Tyler, tell Danabelle what they will experience on our Patreon.
Alright, I'm talking directly to Danabelle here. What's up? I'm gonna call you Danny, California, but you're not gonna die. Well, I mean, so let me tell you about some cool things that you can expect now that you are joining us here on Patreon. First of all, don't skip over that welcome notes, because the welcome notes, you get our wallpapers and you get our music that you can have as downloads for ringtones. I would recommend not using it as your wake up alarm, because you're going to start associating negative feelings toward the music.
I agree.
So I would actually recommend not having it be your wake-up alarm, but it is a good ringtone. Unless you don't like getting phone calls, then just listen to it when you're driving. But in addition to that, we do quizzes. We play fun games like Do You Believe the Bizarre, where we have to guess which stories are real, which stories are fake, brought to us by producer Ben. We have director's cuts where we look back on previous episodes, discuss them. Social media response every Monday, especially on Instagram. We put out questions, y'all respond, and then we respond to those responses and tell you what we think of those questions. We do. Did I already say quizzes? I think I did.
Quizzes.
But we do.
We also do.
You look very excited to say something.
I am. Google Hangouts.
Oh, yes.
We hang out. We literally just hang out with you guys and talk for about an hour. And then we also do movies together.
That's right.
Which are so much fun.
So much fun, even if the movies are terrible. And if you're in our dedicated tier, two things. One, after being in that tier for 3 months, you get an exclusive Patreon-only shirt that you cannot buy. It is just sent to you for free after being a member for 3 months. And we do a monthly giveaway, which is frowned upon, but that's okay, by the Patreon platform. So to make that work, we have an exclusive Patreon-only Discord. So if you are a dedicated tier member, make sure you're in that exclusive Discord. And if you're not, hit us up. We'll send you a link, because that is where we conduct our monthly giveaways, which this month was a shirt, an episode series design shirt. Mm-hmm. We already have next month's thing planned. Super excited about that. And the month before, we did a beach towel. Again, you don't pay for this. This is just you are in this tier, the $10 dedicated tier, and you get all this fun stuff. We also do interviews, so much bonus content, so much exciting stuff, and we love doing it.
So with all that, let's get back into the discussion.
So you don't like my Ruth theory? Let me just preface, because I think sometimes people take me a little too seriously.
Okay.
It is about 65% a joke.
Only 65%?
No, that's also a joke.
Okay.
Now, it's a fun theory, right? Like, imagine like the first huge UFO experience was just somehow
an ex-wife.
She followed them, and then in this diner, like, she somehow drugged them, and
That'd be crazy.
They passed out. She got some people to mess with them and do weird things, and they just, like, the dreams of what they had were completely fake. They did endure trauma, which caused weird dreams, which then they ran with as reality.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, that's not what happened. It's just a theory that isn't really a theory.
Well, let's take a big bite out of the cake. Do we believe them? Do we think this happened to them?
I think when it comes down to experiences like this, other than popularity and fame and press coverage, what do they gain? Now,
what's the gain here?
They're always going to be tied to aliens.
Mm-hmm. That's true, but do they know that? This is the first one. Do they know that, though?
Probably not. Like, they didn't have the foresight to know that, like, in 60 years, every paranormal podcast would talk about them.
Yeah, we knew this was going to happen sometime.
I think, but see, it's tough because I didn't live then. I would assume that there would be some social repercussions from it. Like, you have to have, like, government officials and was it police officers or no, the therapists? Who was vouching for them as people?
A major in the army.
Yeah.
That served with Barney.
So, I mean, there's social repercussions.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like for me, the way that I'm mentally processing this, it's not so much whether or not they're lying. I think it's more so what happened to them. Mm-hmm. If it was alien activity,
what else could have
or
been?
If it was something that they could have mistaken as alien activity.
That's my biggest question too. Like, if it's not aliens, right? What did they see in the sky?
Are there any theories as what it could have legitimately been? I'm obviously not buying Jupiter.
The biggest theory I've seen about what actually it is that they're making it up, which doesn't seem right to me. Now, I did see an article that said, regardless of what it was, something happened to Barney. Now, maybe it's this. Maybe they did catch more slack more slack. Maybe they did catch more shit for being an interracial couple, and they got beat up.
Yeah, that's...
And they don't want to talk about it.
So instead of telling people that they got, like, attacked for being an interracial couple...
They leaned into something more extraordinary.
So then what if they were drugged because of that? So what if... I mean, like, the Ruth thing was an extreme. But what if there was some type of drug that was
There very well could have been. There very well could have been, like, LSD or something.
Or, like, what if... Yeah, something like that. Or if they were just, like, what if a car followed them and just smashed into them? And, like, well, no, it couldn't have because their car wasn't damaged. And something landed on the car.
Yes.
So I don't know what that could have been. There are little details like that. Like
There's lots of strange details.
Her map, the scuffed shoes. I mean, he could have been dragged by anyone. That doesn't have to be an alien. So the scuffed shoes is whatever. But the marking on the car and her map, whatever credibility you want to give her map. I don't know, like, if they could have legitimately been...
That's what we're talking about, proof right now, right? So the proof that's there, it's the car that's marked up, the pink powder on the dress that wasn't there, the ripped dress, the warts.
Yeah.
Which is a physical thing. The markings on the car. I think there was some radiation. I didn't see it in my article.
Oh, on the clothing?
A little bit, yeah. Not like dangerous amounts, but some. Oh, also, I didn't write this down, but an article mentioned that if the Betty and Barney brought a compass up to those markings on the car, and the compass went haywire.
Oh.
So they're magnetized.
Yeah, I don't want to really entertain the idea that they're lying, because what fun is that? And it seems like there's nothing really to gain. And if it was to cover a attack due to being interracial, then that's sad. That's tragic.
Yeah.
And
that's my biggest guess, though. If you'd asked me what it was besides an alien, I would guess that.
Could it be repression? Or do you think it was
could be repression?
Repression, or...
Absolutely, they don't want to think about it. Their brain's protecting them from thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because it could be very traumatic. Thankfully, Barney didn't get lynched.
Yeah.
But it could very well be something of that sort. I know this was a more liberal area, but things happen everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But there is, I mean, for the unusual side of things, like the magnetism, the radiation, the markings, like what they, like even the dreams and things like that. Mm-hmm. Like if they were consistent talking about that, I don't know. Unless it really was press coverage and fame, I don't see a reason to lie. And I mean, even if you're lying, do you want, like, I feel like when you're making up lies, you're like, I like the details, Betty, but what if I don't get like something
on my butt?
Yeah, and I don't have genital warts. Can we do like they cut my arm? And she's like,
Betty's like, no, you need to have it up here.
And you're gonna commit, motherfucker.
Well, that also leads into the theory that maybe it was racial because Betty didn't get it as bad.
Yeah,
you know,
I don't know,
but also I think there's so many strange details about this.
Yeah,
that I think does point toward alien.
Also, I wonder if, and this isn't like, I'm not trying, they definitely are victims in this scenario, so I'm not trying to make it seem like, tell them what they should have done. But if it was like an attack, I wonder if they would have brought attention to it because they were so involved in that. Like the civil rights. They were involved in that, weren't they?
Yeah.
So I wonder if they would have, I don't want to say use that for their platform, but I wonder if they would have.
Or I wonder if it would have made them seem weak. Or they would have thought it made them seem, it wouldn't have. But it could have been.
I don't know.
I'm just saying.
We're going off a way path. I mean, a possibly true path, but.
So one more little flavor.
A little Mio? A little squirt of Mio?
Yeah. Outer Limits and Twilight Zone both premiered alien-based episodes that year.
Before?
Uh-huh. Before.
They're like, we're going to be movie stars.
So maybe it's an influence. Maybe it's something to hide behind. Maybe they saw it something as gaining popularity. But I don't think so, personally. I think this is a well-timed attack.
It has... Now, you could argue that it established the criteria of a traditional abduction, but at the same time, so many, as far as a credible abduction could be considered credible, let's just say they are. So many credible abductions after this have continued with a lot of the same themes.
All those tropes follow.
Yeah, so it's not like they set the standard and a bunch of fakers copied it afterwards.
Yeah. And how many of those have heard about this case before then, right?
Yeah. So,
like, did the people that went fishing in Pascagoula, did they know about this case?
It was 10 years later, so maybe, but maybe not. I don't know.
Right.
But so much of what is part of the alien abduction lore started here and has continued. And it's not like it's a story that's difficult to believe without any other odd things about it. You know what I mean? It's not like a couple randomly went out, came back, told the sheriff or whoever I was abducted. It's like loss of time, loss of location, bodily harm, weird phenomenon with the body, radiation, marks on the car. There's definitely factors that would show that it was an alien abduction or something supernatural happened.
Yeah.
Or extraterrestrial.
Can we take a moment? I want to share the pictures and the audio clips.
Yes.
We'll be right back.
So, we just heard and saw the pictures of what the things looked like and what the ship looked like and Betty's map and all the audio stuff. What do you think, dude?
Aliens are terrifying, and this stuff will be posted on social media as well.
Yeah.
Aliens are absolutely terrifying. The Zeta Reticuli map is remarkably close to what is apparently really out there. But what really strikes me is the audio, because unless they're actresses and actors,
yeah,
it makes
they're
them
not
sound plural.
They're not.
It was, I mean, it's traumatic. Like it just feel like it sounds traumatic. Doesn't sound fake. It doesn't sound rehearsed. And also, it just really puts you in the place. Like, imagine you black out, you wake up, you are somewhere completely unknown. There's these beings that you've never seen before that are absolutely terrifying. You don't know if they're going to hurt you, if they're going to kill you, what they're doing to you, what kind of painful sensations you might feel. Like, it is terrifying. Like, at the very basic level, it is absolutely terrifying. You don't know what's going to happen. Ugh, it's just...
No, you wake up and you see these flat-faced motherfuckers looking at you.
Yes.
Terrible.
It's... Yeah, like, you can joke about certain things that they did, and, you know, like, we always stay pretty lighthearted, but it is, in actuality, just horrific.
It reminds me of the Travis Walton Fight in the Sky scene.
Yeah.
It's horrifying.
But the audio doesn't sound like a rehearsed, like, I'm gonna say this.
No way.
And I asked during when we were listening, and it was when they were under kind of the hypnotic state, and it's like, it's almost like they're experiencing it again in real time. Like, from a distance. Like, they're telling it, it's not like they're talking to the aliens. They are referring to it, but it seems like they're reliving it again, which is just...
And those hypnosis tapes almost back up what I said, right? That Barney's was so intense.
Yes.
Betty's was also intense.
Hers was, like, traumatic and scared, where his was like, I'm being attacked.
Yes.
Now, you brought up a good point during that about where it took place.
Yeah. I was wondering, do you think there's a chance that they didn't take off, that they stayed in the forest?
That, I'll be 100% honest, that is something I did not consider. And based on what the leader said about where they are and her asking where they are, I think it made me initially think that they were up in space. But at the same time, he was very vague. He was very Yoda about it. So I think maybe they were. He's like, gas prices.
I think they landed, and there's no reason to take off again. It would just draw attention to themselves.
Yeah, yes. That's they landed exactly where the Rough and Mirage was. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Who knows? If they were able to at least, like, disguise themselves or turn the lights off or something. My initial instinct was that they did take off, but I think that's just...
That's what you think about in a spaceship, right?
Yeah.
But that's the beam.
Yeah.
That's the beam taking you.
Yeah, like, they just carried these people in, dragged them out, threw them in there.
It was pretty mafia of them, actually. Yeah, so that's Betty Barney Hill. I guess I'll do mine first, because I'll let you think about yours. I want to impose. I'm gonna go believable.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. This is the story.
Yeah, and there's a reason. It hits all those tropes. It hits all those things that you see in Alien Encounters that just make sense that it is something else.
I feel like if you take lying out, like, let's just pretend lying is not on the table.
Okay.
It seems like there's significantly more evidence that it was alien than it was just another random attack by people and they got drugged and stuff. Like, it's a theory, but way more of the evidence that we're given and that's found online, obviously, lends itself to more of an alien abduction.
There's so many more strange things that seem outer-worldly. So that is our episode on the long-awaited Betty and Barney Hill abduction.
We literally had to do 3 recordings. Not the whole. Like, this isn't our third time doing this. but we've had to stop, like stop export because of random things with the computer.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea how long this episode is going to be, but
either.
It feels good. It feels like it's like, I think, and it's exciting too. It's like the Mothman. It's like when people see this, they're going to know. And y'all like hearing about stories you already know. But this is such a big one.
It's huge. Like, we were going to have to do this one eventually.
Yeah, but it's not like, it's almost, I always say this and I always feel this way. It's like, it's not like a song. When you're a band and you have a good song, you play it every night.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Rise Against is going to play Prayer of the Refugee, right? But when we do an episode, it's done.
Yeah, that's true. It's such a fascinating story, though. It had to be told.
Yeah. Well, there was never a chance we weren't going to.
No, right? Eventually. I mean, episode 7,000. I want to shout out Chris for sticking with me on Twitch for the entire time. My last time streaming. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad you came in.
Last of Us?
Yes, it was The Last of Us. About halfway through the game. In the winter part, which is intense.
Yeah, if you want to catch up on that, go to YouTube. And you can search his, I think they're traditionally called Let's Plays, but it is from Twitch.
Yeah.
But it's a playlist, so you can check it out. And then once you're caught up, you can watch him stream it live on Twitch.
Yeah, and also, if you want to get involved with the discussion, we are doing a live Twitch discussion every Tuesday. So if you want to talk about this episode today with us, join us on Twitch tonight at 8.
That's right, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's Twitch. I think it's twitch.com/believethebizarre. I think that's what it is.
I believe.
Go to our socials, you'll find it. But yes, we are talking about this in discussion on Twitch live tonight. If you're listening on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, if you really enjoyed the podcast, you really enjoyed this episode, you're really loving what we're putting out, head to Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. Tell us what you think. Oh man, that's great. But if you're listening on Spotify, like we actually know you are, just hit that 5-star because we appreciate it. It means a lot to us. It helps us out. And it's cool to see what y'all think.
And don't forget, we dropped our new episode series t-shirts. We've got 6 of them. They're all amazing. Shout out Jalen.
Shout out Jalen. And the favorite, now I would say in second place, is you beating up the Fresno Nightcrawler in comic book fashion.
Yeah.
That one definitely is in second place, but I would say for sure the number one seller is the not deer design.
And it's totally fair because it's such a cool design.
It is sick. So definitely check those out if you haven't yet. And as always, thank you so much for listening. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Charlie.
And catch us next week on Believing the Bizarre,
a podcast as bizarre as you are. In 1968, amateur astronomer Mahorjan.
It's astronomer.
Oh,
I think just
amateur astronomer.
Amateur astronomer.
Amateur astronomer.
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 There it is.
Amateur astronomer